today. We're going to have a lightning talk from Mathieu, Thomas, and Nathalie. They're going to be sharing a little bit about their work. Quite excited about that. We're going to then jump into group discussion. In the original post, we are going to do some breakout groups, but we heard from all of you that you really love the group discussions and coming together as a group. So we switched it up. We're going to actually do that as a group. And then we're going to talk about some tips to avoid form fires. We'll share a few that we've seen over the years. Then we'll have another little discussion around some of those tips. And then we're going to have a sneak peek into some future work. And then we're going to wrap up and share some of the feedback survey results from the survey that you all filled out, which was really helpful and informative. So thank you all for doing that. So that's what we have in store for today. So I'm going to jump right into introducing our lightning talk speakers. We're super excited. Mathieu, Thomas, and Nathalie, they're going to be sharing a little bit about their work at a federation level at the Sun Network, an overview of their data management processes, how they co-design with end users, and then we're going to have 5 minutes at the end for Q&A. So if you have questions as they're speaking, sharing their work, feel free to add it in the chat, or you can ask at the end. That works as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over. Mathieu.
Okay, let's go. Is it okay?
It's warming up. Yes, looks great.
Great. So hello everybody. Nathalie, Thomas, and I, we will show you how we use ODK in France to preserve and conserve nature. So Nathalie, Thomas, and I, we work in a non-profit NGOs called SEN. SEN means Natural Space Conservatory. We are non-profit NGOs, and we want to protect nature. So to protect, we need to know the nature we want to protect. So we collect a lot of data about species, habitats, threats, use, and most of those data are geodata. So the map is very important for us in all our tools. And we'll see just after where we manage those data. We are federated. We work at national level in a federation with 23 SEN-like hours, 1,200 employees, and more than 8,000 volunteers. So a lot of people who work in our NGOs. We manage about 300,000 hectares, and we own 18,000 hectares in France and overseas. You have a photo of the lizard you had to discover in the picture, in the warm-up picture. And on the map, you can see the two regions where Thomas, Nathalie, and I are coming from. Thomas is from the western region, Nouvelle-Aquitaine, and Nathalie and I from the eastern Occitanie. And the red points are the sites we manage. So at the national level, we are also a lot of geomaticians, 35 people who are open source enthusiasts. We use the same major tools like Postgres, QGIS, and ODK, and we try to organize workshops and courses to share knowledge, skills, and tools. You can have some. You can see the pictures of a workshop we did in March this year about ODK, and we were discovering entities. Now, we wanted to talk about how we pull the data from Central. We do not do the same, Thomas and I. In Occitanie, we use SQL functions in cron tasks. We developed during the lockdown 2 sets of functions that use OData API to get the data into our database. So the first one only requires curl to run on the server, and the second one, pyODK, needs Python because it uses pyODK. But both sets of functions, what they do, they get the JSON from Central, and they automatically transform those JSON into tables, or they feed the tables if the tables already exist. I let Thomas present their way.
Yes, thank you, Mathieu. I'm glad to be here. It's the first time for me. In Nouvelle-Aquitaine is Bordeaux. It's Bordeaux. I use contacts to retrieve the new submissions from Central API in CSV, and I use the ETL FME to insert data in collect, which is my naturalist database. And in this job, I update the state of submissions in Central with API. And every hour, a scheduled job, with a scheduled job, I update entities in Central to have a mirror of collects basic data: users, studies, organizations, users of organizations, etc. So I use the API of Central and FME to interact with data from Central.
About users and rights management, Thomas, maybe you can start.
Yes, I generate one QR code per user. A user is a user of my collect database. I don't use the front, the central web front, and I use an internal tool in Node.js with specifications of user name, etc. I will share it in a repository, in a Git repository. I only use 4 forms linked to collect with 100 users and 10 organizations.
Okay. So in Occitanie, it's not the same. We have only maybe it's a bad habit, and we will have to change that. But only one main QR code for all our colleagues. We are now more than 100 people using ODK daily, and so one QR code for all our colleagues, and about 40 QR codes for partners using a few forms. In Central, we manage more than 30 forms and 160 real users. So it's a little bit, it's not hard because we can achieve to do that, but the matrix we have to manage which user can see which form is not easy for such a number of forms and users. The other thing is that in all of our colleagues at the office, they can see the 30 forms on their phone, but maybe they will use only 5, 6, or 7 forms. So we have with Nathalie to discuss about that and find a way to to get something more close to the user needs. But maybe one day we will be able to do that in an easier way. That's it about users and rights management. And we wanted to talk about form design and testing. Thomas and us, we do approximately the same. So a colleague, in general, a colleague will ask us for a new form or a new protocol. Maybe I want to go on the field and check lizards or turtles or something else. So we start a discussion on our internal forum. We use Discourse as the ODK community, and we have a thread per form. We ask also to the colleague for a description of the logical of the protocol, and once we have this document, but mostly Nathalie can start to develop the form, and we do that in since last year. We do that in a dedicated project. So we have a dev project. We develop the form into this project. The user can test it, ask for some modification by phone or on the forum, and we iterate until the form corresponds to the need. And we continue to document the forum about this form, what modification we did, what maybe something else we need to add to the form. And we also internally in the IT team, we also document the SQL queries we use to get the data from Central and to disperse the data in our tools. So that's the way we do. And the last slide is the same, but in a comic form. Maybe I should have exposed this one, but this is a good resume of how we work with colleagues when they have a new need, and how we try to make it done and working. I think we were fast. Thanks a lot for your attention. And the last slide is about some credits, pictures, and the song we heard at the beginning. I really encourage you to see the movie. It's not in French, not in English, because there is no people who talk in the movie. So let's go.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I would love to see the comic if we want to.
Okay, of course.
It was so quick. It was so quick.
So sorry. So quick.
No, it's all right. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't read it as fast.
It's really close to the reality, in fact.
Could you walk us through it?
Sorry?
Could you walk us through it? That would be really nice.
Oh.
Oh.
And the lizard is an ocellated lizard, the biggest lizard in Europe.
Mm.
So I see one good question in the chat, which I also kind of have, is how do you do the description of the protocols? Is there a specific format that you ask for? How do users communicate that? And, you know, is it like, how much back and forth do you have to do? How well do the users tend to understand their protocols once they come to you?
Sometimes people are sending us the scientific protocol, and I can see the logic and data that need to be collected. And sometimes they give us Excels, but with all the lists in columns. It depends from colleagues, actually. And sometimes I just discuss with them and see to try to understand what they need.
And Nathalie, Thomas, and I, we all have skills in ecology, so we already use protocols where we were on the field in the life before we were geomaticians, so we can easily understand their need. And sometimes, but rarely, I have a case in mind where a colleague who is in charge to make the law respected on the field, he asked me for a form to register all the people doing things illegal on the site, and he sent me a draft in a PowerPoint. With all the logical, when I click on the button, I was jumping to the slide 5. So in 2 hours, the form was okay. But generally, it is a text, or as Nathalie said, a list of fields to get on the field.
Oh yeah, we have a few more questions here. How do you organize a systematic pretest? From Wolf. Wolf, do you want to elaborate? Want to come off mute?
Pretest is just we send a QR code of the form on the dev project, and they scan it and try it. Most of the time in the office in the first time, and then sometimes on the field. And each time we need to test, we are doing like that.
Great. We have another one from Robson. Do you include visualizations and plots that are expected by the users? Yeah, curious to know more about that. Kind of talking.
Not in the form, but in our internal tools, we can, for some protocols, we can yes, create charts or maps. But no, the form are basically questions and no specific plots or illustration.
Mm-hmm.
Did I well understand the question?
Yeah, I was going to ask Robson, do you want to come on? Do you want to follow up on that?
The thing is that sometimes when I develop a form, the user has expectations about what data will come out from that form. And so one kind of problem is to find the right data. And when I talk about the visualizations and what is possible to get from that form, we try to manage this. We try to organize the ideas and maybe shifting some questions and do stuff like that.
Once the form is running on the field, we have some work to format the data. So all the data is stored in a SQL database, so we can create the views we want for the colleagues. So we can concatenate or split fields, create maps. So all the restitution is done in SQL in our tools.
Thanks.
Maybe we'll have time for one more from Jules. He said that it's cool to see the mapped out views against each form. Is this process automated? Any changes in the form triggers a change in the views or underlying tables and collect?
Yes, it's for me. it's in collect the entities. I pull the data of collect into entities in central, but the opposite is not available. Colleagues on the field record the locations, localizations, name the localizations. And in my process, I integrate it into the collect database. And this entity localization goes to entity in central, but it's only the only field that is changed in collect.
Oh.
I don't know if the answer is correct.
From our side in Montpellier, when we do a modification, we had a field, or we hide a field in the form. The transformation of the table that stores the data in the database is automatic. So we only have to define the cron task, and this will be automated, so we don't have to declare a new field in the table or in the table. After, we have to manage and to make this field available in a view, maybe, but we do not have to rewrite the table definition. It's automatic.
Great. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For sharing your work. Everyone give a little applause, maybe with emojis. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm going to share my screen here just quickly. It's a really nice transition as well into our topic. For the rest of the call, in terms of testing, how to avoid form fires. And so what we mean by fires here is really maybe there was a challenge, something went wrong, maybe there's a deadline, maybe you didn't have time to test or to kind of run through that process that Mathieu and Nathalie and Thomas just shared with us. And yeah, maybe there's incomplete logic, maybe something didn't make sense for the context, and there was a fire and it led to poor quality data. So now we would want to kind of open it up to the group and jump into a discussion. I can share these in the chat as well. Ellen, do you want to run through these kind of questions for the group?
Sure, sounds good. Thank you so much. Fun presentation and fun Q&A afterwards. And I see there are a couple of questions we haven't gotten to, but I think we'll get to them in this discussion. So we wanted to try to get at some examples of maybe when things haven't gone quite right with a form or with an ODK process. These things happen, and it's kind of a good opportunity to learn when we have issues. So tell us a little bit about what happened, maybe how you came to a resolution, and some things you might do differently now. Maybe we'll start with that for a little bit. See if anybody has some fires that they're willing to share. I know it's a little bit hard, but again, great opportunity for us all to learn. And then we can shift it a little bit into talking about general principles or ideas that we have for ensuring form quality before we hand off to Ali, and she goes through some of the tips that we've put together, which I bet we'll already have talked about, so that'll be fun. Ali, do you want to take us off the slides so we can really have a conversation? Awesome. Get to see everyone's wonderful faces. So any brave souls willing to share a fire that they've experienced? Am I seeing Paul maybe?
Yeah, I'm willing to start. Yeah. Yeah, I sent a team out collecting entomological data in Chad with a form that had some logic around a date field in it, and I tested it in Enketo, but not in Collect. and the logic was was absolutely fine in Enketo, but in collect in the field, they essentially got stuck with a form that wouldn't advance onto the next screen because of the way the logic had been set up, and it was the most simple mistake. But yes, they wasted a lot of time in the field trying to get my bad form to work, and I still feel very guilty about it. And in terms of what I do next, I don't ignore that QR code that says scan this and actually try it out on collect. Whereas normally I've just sort of looked like, oh, yeah, I've tried it in Enketo, it's fine. But yes, beware of Enketo. It's great, but it's not everything.
Oh, now we feel guilty too. Yeah, there are some differences like that that we're trying desperately to align. I know it's super frustrating. So that's some things for the ODK team to take in as well. Thank you so much, Paul. Anyone else have a story?
Yes, I think I would share mine. Hi everyone. So mine was this. There's a list of local governments or wards in the state, right? So it's a choice filter, list of local governments. Then you go down to the wards and go down to communities. Then you select those before you proceed to collect the data. I was in a hurry. I think I missed a chunk of them. I didn't realize until people on the field, and then I got calls and emails saying that this is not there, this is not there. And it was very frustrating because most of them were in areas that they couldn't refresh their forms. Mind you, they were still using aggregate at the time, so it was horrible. It wasn't going to refresh automatically, so we updated, but then had to call people individually to tell them to get new forms before the update was there. It was, oh, it was a disaster. But what we did then was now going on for planning forms that are this big. We have a team that are dedicated to testing. They don't touch the forms, they don't do anything, they don't see the XLS form. They just test it. So that way we have a fresh set of eyes. Just look at the form from that perspective, and then we're only tasked with designing, those things are tasked with seeing the form logic work and that. So yeah, that was the biggest one. I think I couldn't sleep that night because a number of people on the field, it was going to delay the estimated leave another 3 or 4 days. It was quite the experience. So yeah, that's the story of my form fire I had.
Thank you. Yes, forgetting some options, that's a tricky one. And I'm so glad. So this sounds like auto form update has been helpful. We think that's been a really helpful feature as well. And I think for these kinds of issues, if you can just know that once you push it, as soon as someone has connectivity, they'll get the update. That's much easier. Anyone else want to share something?
I'll share really quick here, just 2 things in particular that have caused headaches. And I remember both of these instances actually seeing a forum post of somebody saying, oh, you should never do this. And I remember thinking, yeah, but I'm not like, that doesn't apply to me. And the 2 things were for a photo field, not putting a max pixels on it. And so coming up with a large data set really quickly, much larger than I would have liked, and not having an easy way to change that now. And then the other thing is for ID numbers. I remember reading a forum post about having it not be an integer, but rather having it being a string field or a text field. And if you want to put constraints or, do that kind of thing. But I remember thinking, oh, well, I'm always going to have integers. And now I'm further down the line and I would like to not have integers. I would like to have the other thing. So those are 2 ones that I've both read posts about, and despite reading the post, kind of ignored the advice. And yeah.
Sometimes we have to learn from experience, right? One thing about the second one is now you can always update fields to become strings. You can't make them a more specific type, but you can make them into strings. So maybe that's a little tip that some of you might be interested in. I might make sure that we have that clearly documented. But you should be able to go to a more general type, which is string. So that could be a helpful thing in the future if you want to just like, okay, I didn't get my type right, but I can do a string with a constraint. I see a hand from Saad.
Yeah, I wanted to come in to share not a form fire kind of thing, but a more related topic that because I've been part of quite big projects with the rollout of ODK forms going out to like 2,000 or 3,000 field staff who are doing the collection at national level. What happens is that if your project is out there for quite some time and you have sent multiple form updates, which get translated into auto updating in few of the forms, there is a disconnect between field staff who are not having consistent internet connectivity. Now, what happens is that since they are not very educated, and when they start complaining, it's very difficult for us sitting at the back end to ask them which version of the form are you on. That is, I think I did a post about it on the forum as well, that the dashboard should keep a track of certain device ID having updated to certain form release, so that sitting at the dashboard, we could know that somebody at the field having some issue with the form and they are unable to register what exactly is happening. So at least we should be able to know that which form version are they talking about. There's an indirect way of getting their a form version by putting the form ID in the coding of the form, but and looking at the data, the last data submission that they've done. But again, it's a raw thing type of method to figure out that whether they are on the on which version of form, and maybe they're on form version 3 and they updated to form 4 version 4, and that's the culprit version which is causing the issue. So the idea was to track it with the form version so that we could do quick troubleshooting. Thanks.
That sounds good. Yes, I remember that post. I'll also follow up with another concept of maybe starting with a screen that says really explicitly, you are on version so-and-so. So that might be a concept that could help them self-report. But I hear you about having more of that kind of information on the server side about what's actually going on in the field. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Joseph.
Thank you very much. So my name is Joseph. I'm in Kampala, Uganda. I can share two of the different situations which I faced. One of them was just simply where you have a field that's supposed to be a note, and you restrict it to have a yes, so it is relevant. And so that mistake happened, and so I never used to test my forms, but that taught me really a big lesson, because it was something small but caused quite a lot of inconvenience. And so from then on, I started testing the forms, and so the test feature which is there, I use it quite a lot and I like it. Then the second situation was about the Stack Overflow, where the validate, the offline validate cannot work. So I was working with health facilities, and I was supposed to collect data from health facilities. They already submit routine data, so they go for now this is a DQA, like a data quality assessment, trying to validate data that was already submitted routinely into the national system. And so because you cannot read with the ODK Collect, you can't read from the server. So I was reading this data directly using a calculate field, and I use unique identifiers for the health facilities, then populate a field that gives the reported data which was in the national system. And I do that using Stata, concatenate all the data using Stata, now put them into the Excel. But the Excel, that Excel cell, the one we are using in the Excel is actually gets filled. It cannot accommodate, it accommodates up to a certain maximum capacity. So when I pull it from Stata and I paste into the cell, the calculate field now cannot see certain things because it is overflown. And so now when I could run the XLS form offline, the one which creates the X form offline, it could give me a Stack Overflow. And I had really a big problem. So I had to, the teams were already set for fields. So I had to switch off the validate and run the form without validate, and then go for some few facilities where the data could not come out because it could not be validated. Now I had to replace them with others technically. But that one now taught me a lesson, and I changed to use the pooling functions. There's now the pooling where you can, I think that's the better option. Instead of having, because the cell gets overflown, so now I use a different file and make sure that it pulls from the files. Although the challenge that we have currently, actually right now I have a deployed team that's working on them, but some devices tend to be a bit slow in pulling, because you can have when you have 15 files where they are putting things and then make comparisons, they tend to be slow. I don't know, maybe with time also that can be worked on.
Yeah, absolutely.
For that.
So I encourage you, if you can, to send your form. If it's okay for it to be public, put it on the forum. But if not, send it to someone on the team. We are constantly working on performance, and seeing some real forms is super helpful.
It is okay. I will send it. Actually, I sent the previous one I sent, which was using the calculate themselves, where I was not pulling. I sent it on the forum. Then this one also I can send, the one which is pulling.
Perfect. Yeah, let's take a look at it together. So I see 3 hands, and I want to go fairly quickly so we have a chance to just race through some of the tips that we'd prepared. So let's go for Chris, and then Jules and Robson, and then we'll hand off to Ali for a little bit. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks. I'll just do one then, and that's it's a form fire of the idea of training and real data. So a form that I developed, all set to go, and we did a training session and used that form for the training session, and that stuck data into Central, and then I didn't actually want to use that junk data, so had a big problem. So these days I now have a duplicate form which says all over it, testing, 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 so that it's in a separate silo from the actual data. So big problem. I've still got that data somewhere hiding in Central. So, and again, it's that, can we delete our own data? And it's particularly photos that are the issue, and I'm still trying to get my head around that particular thing.
And there's more. Singh, who's on this call, wrote a really great testing guide with more tips like this. So take a look at that also if you haven't had a chance to see it. Jules.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. No, the fire actually for me was one today, but there was a big one in the past. So the today's is we exhausted all the testing internally with the team in the field, but we had been testing on our own assumptions, not thinking of what would actually happen from the respondents themselves. So I get in the field and someone says, actually, you're asking me for 2 numbers, but I only have 1. Then the second number was required. So we ended up coming up with a sort of quick fix to mimic the second number. And then later in the data, we'll have to flag that. But I like the aspect where somebody said, everyone who develops the form shouldn't be the one to test it. So that's second I. But the second fire really was we have a server that was boxed in a house. You cannot access it if you're outside the house. So we deploy across the country. We start data collection. It was a growth monitoring activity. And we realized some of the age for some children weren't really tested and were giving weird results. So we had to pull back all the tablets back to the main office in the capital, then get the form again, change, re-update it into the tablets, send it back. So in addition to whatever testing you do, I always recommend having a field test. You run it with real data, maybe 100 cases, 200 cases, see if everything is working, and then deploy the entire assessment or data collection nationwide or whatever area you're covering. It always helps. But those fires, I have a lot of those, and they seem to be fun to learn from. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jules. And Robson, closing us off with one last story.
Okay, it's about choice lists that changes over time during form revisions. And sometimes people delete some options from the choice list. And this creates a lot of problems because even the old data in Central gets corrupted because you don't have that choice on the list now. So what I did to manage this is always create a active, inactive column in my choice list. If it's an external file or internal to the form, I always have this. And then you never delete anything, you just flag it like inactive. And it worked.
That's a great tip and a great transition to Ali. I know we haven't left you much time, but maybe we can race through these tips. It'll be shared on the forum and we can continue the discussion there as well. Thank you so much for all these great stories.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Yeah, I feel like you've covered a lot of them. A lot of these tips are also taken from Sing's guide, which was just shared in the chat as well. So the first tip that we wanted to share that actually didn't come up was mapping out your workflows, visually mapping them out to understand that end-to-end process to ensure quality forms, helps identify challenges or gaps in the process. It's really great to do this with different roles, different perspectives on your team so that you can understand how the process works from a different point of view. We'll share this after. We have some templates, some kind of guides. Some of the summit folks might recognize this, really understanding what's your goal, who are the people involved, what are the different phases, what are the challenges. It's quite helpful to map out when you're designing a new form or as part of a process, or maybe redesigning and iterating. It helps come back to the goal, how things have changed. Maybe I'll skip through this. It's just an example of what that might look like, and really kind of highlighting the different swim lanes or the different kind of phases that are happening over time. And you can see at the bottom there's analysis, making sure you consider that as well, thinking about the format, what data you need to collect. So not leaving that until the end, and not only thinking about the digital touch points, thinking about all of the different steps in the journey, different people involved. And you can show a repeat process where things might have loops in them. And so we'll share this afterwards in case this might be a new tool that you haven't tried out. So you kind of break down your workflow and then you can map it out. And you can do that with others. So the second tip is around co-design. A lot of you mentioned working with the field teams, testing, role-playing, simulating a workflow, what that looks like. So really like playing that whole sequence out, understanding all of the steps, designing forms with users. I'll show an example of that in just a moment. Having dedicated training time, a lot of you said that. And this all helps create collective ownership and encourages feedback at all stages, which is really important. So in terms of visualizing your workflow, doing that with field teams, here's a quick example of what that might look like. You can iterate on the form logic. You can do this using paper, or you could use a whiteboarding tool or other design tool to kind of map out maybe some of those more complex questions where there's complex logic that you really need to understand how it works at the different stages and getting feedback from different users. And this is also really helpful to communicate out with stakeholders. So you can map your whole workflow and then also mapping the form itself. This is from Dale as well, which you can have the link and have a look at the full thing. Now, why isn't it clicking? Okay, there we go. Another quick one is using a practice or real question. So use with the same app users for the design, practice, and real work. So here's a nice example of what that might look like, indicating this is a practice run, or you're collecting real data. And field staff might actually want to practice even when the work is ongoing. So it's nice to have that option. And you could also add a field for providing feedback when they're in practice mode as well to tighten those feedback loops. Another tip is thinking about the user experience. Some of you have already shared a few ways to do that. You can use media to help clarify the text. Often in the co-design sessions, you'll hear a lot of what's going wrong, and it might not be the specific solution of using this question type or this appearance. That's what you kind of have to work backwards and figure out what makes most sense for the context. And sometimes using images or using other media to help explain the definition or will help get better data. You could show warnings, summaries. You could double enter important data. So with the birth date example that Jules brought up, maybe you could write out the birth date. Maybe you could then use a different way of capturing that birth date. There could be a lot of ways to make sure that you're cross-checking and getting the data correctly. The fourth tip is to use a test project. And we heard that in the lightning talk, having a designated test space that's helpful for you to kind of have it isolated out. You might not want to share this with everyone, maybe just those that are iterating and testing on the form so it doesn't confuse anyone. It's helpful for testing out multiple forms. And then also, this is helpful when testing out entities in your workflows, because entity lists and entities can only be created from published forms and submissions. And it's not possible to test the usage of entities in follow-up forms with real entities have been created. So that's helpful if you want to test out those workflows, if that's something you're considering. So I'm speeding through. The last tip is to write a test plan. So you can outline common scenarios, thinking about, here's a nice example of whether that was a test or fail. You can create target questions with logic, thinking about what could go wrong, thinking about, just ways that there could be a fire, as we have all learned from those different scenarios, and then test again when the form changes. Always iterate, get feedback. And a lot of these resources are in that guide. So we definitely encourage you to have a look. We're going to probably come together with all of these insights shared on this call and put together another resource as a follow-up, because we've heard a lot of great tips earlier as well. So yeah, I did not leave you much time either. Do you want to give us a quick sneak peek? I can click through the slides for you.
Yeah, Ali, thank you so much. And thank you, Alen, for facilitating previously. Yes, as always, I've been pushed to the wall. I don't have any time, but I'm going to try to go slowly and talk to some of the great stuff that's coming. So we've heard some feedback from all of you, our users and customers, that the draft form process needs some improvement. And so Issa and Ali and the team have sat together and made some changes. So this is a sneak peek about what we've been cooking up Essentially, the process is laid out in a more sort of vertical view to make it clearer the difference between drafts and published forms, and sort of going through step by step to sort of help support users, yourselves included, through the process. So that's what it sort of looks like. Each form definition will tell you, like, how many submissions, how many attachments need to become, which ones are missing, what the effects of a publication will do, whether or not it'll create entities or these kinds of things. So testing becomes more integrated as part of your form editing and form update process. So that's a feature that is coming to ODK soon. You can see that now test submissions are down at the bottom. So you really see that they're test submissions and not real submissions. So we're working on these changes now. I cannot make any promises on when it'll ship because I'll get in trouble with the very people on this call. So I'll say it's coming soon, and it'll be ready for you as soon as it's done, and no later than that. We sent out a survey to all insiders, and I wanted to summarize some of the results of those surveys. The good news is that almost all of you find Insiders valuable. That would be very sad if you didn't, but it seems like Insiders is a valuable program. We also find it valuable, so that's great. And that folks would engage more with Insiders activities if we could do more activities. And so we are thinking about what those activities will look like, more on that later. The highlights are sort of the dinner party vibe, a very technical dinner party vibe that we have going here. People like coming together as a community. The light link talks, like the one that Mathieu and crew gave, are very popular. And then the learning deep dives. I personally also enjoy the learning deep dives, a lens thing on entities. If you missed that from the last call, we do have the recording there, and a lens deep dive on entities was super useful. I actually learned a few things, which is maybe embarrassing, but should never be embarrassed to learn more stuff. So if you haven't seen that, do check that out. The things that were not as valuable, things like the recognition for being an awesome insider was not super high, and the breakouts were also not as well liked. It's one of the reasons we're not doing a breakout on this one. So we'll continue to iterate and get your feedback. We know that folks want more about how we build the product development process. Everybody wants to know more about entities and analysis. We will probably ping folks maybe on the next call to try to dig more into this, to get a sense of really what you mean by the product development process and analysis. And so expect some questions about that, so we can build, an Insiders program that works great for you. Coming up, we're going to take all the stuff that we've learned. Obviously, we'll share this video. So if you're watching us on the video, hi, welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the button. I don't know where we're going to put a button, but yeah, subscribe. So we're going to share this video. So that, I'm sorry, I've been up for a long time. We're going to share this video, and then create another resource. So let's try to summarize some of the tips, some of the fires that you've had, and try to get that into the documentation. Another thing that I want to encourage the team to do, they don't know that I'm going to encourage them to do this, but there are also things that we can do in pyX form to warn you. I think there was an example about like creating an image that was too big. Like, for example, if we see that you're using a note and you have a relevance on it, we can warn you about some of these things in pyX form when you're converting the form. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to do that as well, and then creating more resources for you going forward. The next item on the list is, improving the user experience for user permissions. We know that it can be tricky to sort of manage large groups of people or even small groups of people. And so we are making a big push on this. Here again, I can't announce anything because I don't want to get in trouble, but there's some cool stuff coming around user permissions, and Ali will be reaching out to some, or maybe even all of you, to gather your feedback as we build these new features. Since it's August, we've adopted a European status here in San Diego, where we will not be doing a call in August. Hopefully everybody gets a chance to take some time off and enjoy their friends and family and lives. So there'll be no call in August, but we do have a call in July before then, and there will be a lightning talk. I don't think we've announced who's going to be. Oh, there it is. How about that? We have announced who's going to be. It's going to be Robson. Is going to be doing a talk on his work. Would be touching on work in the agricultural space. A lot of people in Insiders are in the agricultural space, so I'm really excited about that. Sharing some information about traceability assessments, his process around analysis, and his experience using pyODK and other Python libraries to create dashboards. So that's what we have on the docket. We've got about 2 minutes left. So with that ample amount of time, maybe we can open up the floor to see if anybody has questions or comments on anything that we've covered so far during this call.
I was going to say a very big thank you for the new styling for geoshapes and geotraces. It's amazing.
Awesome. Glad you like it, Ali.
Oh, I love it. It looks so good.
Yeah, big shout. I didn't do anything there, so I'm not going to take any credit. The team did a great job of that, and I think there's more coming. I think MB Tiles downloads, Ellen, are coming in a beta.
Yeah, we should have the beta hopefully by the end of this week or early next week.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Any other questions or comments?
And I see a question from Wolf about automatic, semi-automatic form testing. I'm going to share a few things on the forum. If I forget, please. I've put it in my notes, so I'll share some things.
You're not going to give us a bigger hint than that? Give us a little something.
Currently, it requires some programming abilities, but we're working on making that hopefully more accessible. So that is something that we want to give more access to in the kind of midterm, not short term, but midterm. I agree, it's really important.
Awesome. Well, we are unfortunately, this is a little sad, but we're all out of time. So thanks to everyone for making it on the call today. I hope it was fun and productive and all those good things. So we have a call in July. We'll send out information about that. And yeah, make sure you join the beta test for Collect. To give you one more bit of motivation, we added a little feature there that will help you do a geofencing. And so that's not in the release notes, but I see some eyebrows raising. Awesome. So please sign up for the beta. In the release notes, we'll give you an example of how to do geofencing, and that's a new feature that's coming out too. So thanks so much, and happy data collection.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.